Hello and welcome to Your Health Reclaimed with DrPND, where we help you reclaim your health with tips, tools, and resources to live your most optimal and vibrant life. Here's your host, DrPND.
Hello and welcome to Your Health Reclaimed. This is your host, Dr. PND, and today on this episode, we are going to talk about the top tips for stimulating the vagus nerve and how that supports the gut-brain axis. So the vagus nerve has been a somewhat of a hot topic in the last few years. And a lot of people throw the name out there, and there's different information, what it is, what it does, how it should be supported, and so forth. I'm not going to go into great detail by any means, but I just want to go over, give an idea of what it is, what it does, very quickly. And ultimately, what are actual practical, real ways that you can support it for free, or at least very inexpensively, and why it is important. So, in holistic health, as the name applies, there's no compartmentalization, separation of organs, and different disease categories and so forth. Everything works as a whole. So the vagus nerve, when I explain what it is, you have to understand that the practices and the tips that I'm going to give here will affect the whole physiology. But this is in regard that it does, because the vagus nerve is so important in general health on every level. It's supporting it through those practices is very important, and is also more targeted to include that direct stimulus to the nerve. And the big thing is, I don't want people to think that these tips and practices that I'm going to discuss are only for the vagus nerve. They're for everything. They're for your whole body. That's the whole idea behind holistic health and the reality of holistic health. Everything has to be addressed, and the whole person has to be addressed. So let's begin talking a little bit about what it is. So the gut and the brain, are deeply interconnected through what's called the gut-brain axis. That's something I'm sure a lot of people have heard as well. This is ultimately a bidirectional highway influenced by the vagus nerve. So up to 90% of vagus nerve fibers actually relay information. Things such as inflammatory status, satiety and hunger cues, energy metabolism signals from the gastrointestinal tract to the brain. In contrast, about approximately 10% of the vagus nerve fibers bring information from the brain to the gut. Information that regulates the normal secretion of digestive enzymes and signals when the stomach is full is communicated, for example, along the vagus nerve highway. So the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, and it's the only cranial nerve to wander into the abdomen, to the GI. It regulates homeostasis, heart rate, digestion, breathing, supports normal inflammatory responses, enhances mood, and so forth. So the gut communicates to the brain directly through the vagus nerve and other spinal pathways. It also communicates through neurotransmitters, immune signaling molecules, and byproducts of microbial fermentation. This is why the old saying of you can't have happy thoughts on a sour stomach is very true. That's why when people are eating and they get upset real quick from a sad conversation or bad news, they can get indigestion because things shut down. This is exactly why. Because ultimately, the vagus nerve controls those aspects. Also, this is why when you have healthy gut bacteria and commensal healthy microbiome, you have healthy byproducts, because they're the byproducts of those microbial fermentations that take place. So happy tummy, happy thoughts, and generally speaking, good health. That's why, again, for everything is related directly or indirectly to the gut. As I said always before, if you're dealing with a chronic disease, you will have some kind of gastrointestinal dysfunction, directly or indirectly, to some extent, whether large or small. And I see this with my clients all the time. Doesn't matter what I'm dealing with, you will have some kind of gastrointestinal dysregulation. So let's talk a little bit about some examples that I just talked about, and regarding the vagus nerve. So neurotransmitters, you have the gamma aminobutyric acid, which is GABA, it's spelled GABA, serotonin, dopamine, epinephrine. The immune signaling molecules, the cytokines like the interleukin 1, 6, and 10, the byproducts of microbial fermentation, which are extremely important, the short chain fatty acids, things like butyrate, propionate, acetate. All these are important. And when I do comprehensive stool testing, I test for all of these because you have to see what's going on and where is the circulation coming from. But emerging research highlights the importance of supporting this pathway, the gut-brain pathway, to the vagus nerve for improved cognitive and mental health outcomes by default. So adopting strategies that strengthen gut health will directly and indirectly, as I said, improve overall health and brain health included. Now as we transition into spring, I think it's the perfect time to honestly adopt habits that influence and stimulate the vagus nerve and optimize gut and brain health. So the vagus nerve, gut-brain axis, and the vagal tone. Let's talk about those. So the vagal tone is often measured indirectly, actually, by heart rate variability, HRV testing. You can get those on your phone. A lot of the smart watches have them, Garmin, whatever you name it. You can measure the HRV. Or this is actually the time interval between your heartbeats. That's what HRV measures. HRV, so high HRV is generally accepted as being associated with a slower heart rate and subsequently a higher vagal tone. In comparison, a lower HRV is associated with higher rate and heart rate and lower vagal tone. When vagal tone is strong, the body is able to manage stress, support digestion, and maintain balanced microbiome. Conversely, poor vagal tone and function is associated with digestive disorders, heightened stress responses, and even mental health concerns like anxiety and depression and panic attacks. Many of the interventions aimed at modulating vagal tone work by affecting HRV and include lifestyle practices like humming, gargling. Literally, I know it sounds stupid, but it works. Deep breathing exercises, cold exposure, meditation, and mindfulness practices, and of course, dietary lifestyle modifications, and including proper probiotic and other micronutrient supplementation. We're not going to go into the micronutrient supplementation, dietary changes, and protocols because these are custom to people, but I'm going to go over more general tips that are, again, either free or very low cost that you can do every day. So I deal with digestive issues a lot. As I said, it doesn't matter what chronic issue somebody comes to me for, they will have digestive dysregulation, GI dysregulation, dysfunction to some degree or another by default, as I said that before. Oftentimes, I cannot tell you how much that is either contributed to or exacerbated by chronic stress. So we live in a society, obviously, we now know that, we function at a high velocity of stress society, high stress, high function, high rush. And that comes with a price. That is chronic stress that leads to anxiety, depression, panic attacks, you name it, and ultimately compromise digestive health. Again, who is the chicken or the egg here? Does somebody have digestive issues and then they start having depressive issues, or was it the other way around? It can be both ways. It's a bidirectional pathway, so that chronic stress can cause dysregulation in the GI. If somebody has already had dysregulation from the GI, not due to chronic stress, but to something else, then the chronic stress will add to that. And also when they do have gastrointestinal issues that are chronic, thereby depending what they are and how bad they are, they will be less resilient to chronic stress, and it's a vicious cycle. So they have a low stress capacity, and then they get exposed to chronic stress in life, and that cycle continues to get fed. With that being said, the practices, again, these basic practices that I'm going to describe, if you have chronic stress, then you cannot remove it from your life because, people die, loved ones die, and, things change, jobs are lost. I mean, the usual stuff that happens. And of course, social media, TV, and everything get fed negativity and just bad, fear-based society, feeding that we live in, creates chronic stress to a point. Some things you absolutely cannot control. Some things you can mitigate to a point, but nonetheless, a lot of things that we get exposed to and happen to us, you really can't control. However, what we can do is mitigate the damage they cause, and be proactive in doing things that really help a lot. And they help a lot in the long run. And also, when these habits are practiced, they really also help in the future for the person to be more resilient and also to be able to handle when chronic stress happens again. Things like, obviously, the benzodiazepines and like Xanax, Valium, alcohol, which a lot of people use to numb the pain and to deal with stress. Food. Unfortunately, these they can be effective short term. Obviously, that's why people do them, but they cause other problems in the long run. Absolutely, cause massive problems, including, obviously, very, very deep-rooted problems. If they get dependent on, become alcoholic or dependent on the drugs, dependent on the processed food, and addiction can really kick in and cause massive chronic disease in the future. So, you really consider what you do when you manage chronic stress, because chronic stress will affect you. It will happen to you. It happens to all of us. Just it's whether how we handle it, how resilient we are. And, some people, yes, they have just natural built-in ability that are a lot more resilient than other people, but nonetheless, all of us can take steps to do damage control of the chronic stress. Okay, that's something that is important. I felt like talking about because I deal with this all the time. Just a general shooting of the hip percentage with people that I deal with. 60-70% of people minimum have chronic stress. They contribute to their digestive issues and other chronic issues that they have. Excuse me. So let's talk about lifestyle practices that activate the vagus nerve. Like I said before, humming and gargling. Yeah, I know it sounds stupid. It sounds funny, but actually works. Humming and gargling, may sound simple, but they're actually very effective, simple, and free ways to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is connected again to the vocal cords. Studies suggest that activities engaging the vocal cords engage the vagal tone, which supports relaxation and digestive processes. How do you do that? Just try humming for a few minutes each day, or on and off, focusing on extended exhalations. Alternatively, gargling water vigorously until it causes a slight tearing response in the eyes is actually another way to stimulate the vagus nerve. Again, all these are just free stuff. You don't believe me? Google them, or look it up on YouTube. You'll see people different ways to do that. They're all the same pretty much, but just get an idea what it looks like and apply it. Just a few times a day, on and off. You'll be amazed what happens. Simple, but can be effective. It's not a solution to a problem, but it's, again, we're trying to talk about doing damage control and mitigating as much damage as possible. Number 2, deep breathing and diaphragmatic exercises. Everybody knows that. Really, nobody does it, though. Controlled breathing techniques, particularly those that emphasize slow, deep breaths, activate the vagus nerve and promote parasympathetic activity. That's the rest and digest state. Diaphragmatic breathing, or what they call belly breathing, increases HRV. Remember, high HRV, good vagal tone. This is the key marker of vagal tone and resilience to stress. How to practice. Try the 4-7-8 breathing technique, meaning inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8 seconds. That's why it's called 4-7-8 breathing technique. Practicing this for a few minutes daily can and will enhance relaxation and digestive capacity. You can do it during traffic. You can do it, if you go take a bathroom break. You can do it in your office. You're not going to look weird as if you're humming or gargling, but it does work. Number 3, I understand this one is a little tough and not everybody can really do it, but cold exposure. So cold water immersion, especially in cold compresses to the face, have been shown to stimulate vagal nerve, increasing parasympathetic activity. Exposure to cold water activates what's called a diving reflex, slowing the heart rate and enhancing vagal tone. How do you practice that? Well, splash cold water on your face in the morning or after meals in the afternoon. More advanced techniques obviously will include cold showers or full submersion of your face in cold water for a few seconds to stimulate what's called the mammalian diving reflex. That's what it's called. But it really does work. So you can splash cold water, take a cold shower, or you can fill up the sink and kind of put the front of your face in the cold water to stimulate that. It's refreshing. It feels good. It might be a little shock at first, but when you get used to it, you'll see the difference. Number 4, meditation and mindfulness. Mindfulness and meditation have been widely studied, as everybody knows at this point, for their impact on stress reduction and nervous system regulation. Research indicates that regular meditation increases vagal tone, improves emotional regulation, and enhances gut function. How to practice? Engage in mindful meditation for about 10 to 15 minutes each day, focusing on breath awareness or body scanning techniques. There are apps on your phone. Obviously, you can go to yoga classes. There's so many available things out there that you can really help you guide you through that. It's usually free or very low cost, and it's very simple. But you just have to do it. You just definitely have to do it. So these are the practices. Let's talk about a little dietary strategies to support the gut and brain axis. So obviously, as I always say, diet is the cornerstone of gut-brain health. Any chronic health condition to be reversed, dietary intervention is a must. So influencing microbiome composition, inflammatory responses, and vagus nerve activity. As mentioned, byproducts of microbial fermentation, including the short-chain fatty acids, what they're called as SCFAs, may facilitate communication between the gut and the brain. That causing ultimately adopting these dietary strategies that promote mucin degrading and short-chain fatty acid producing microorganisms will be crucial in supporting the gut-brain axis. So this is why diet is so important among many things. So how do we do that? Well, incorporate probiotic-rich foods. Probiotics, as everybody knows nowadays, play a vital role in gut-brain communication by modulating neurotransmitter production, supporting normal gut inflammatory responses, and enhancing vagal signaling. Certain probiotic strains, such as the lactobacillus and the bifidobacterium, have been studied a lot, extensively, for their effects on mood and cognitive function. There's a lot of systemic, reviews, but the latest one here was a systemic review of basically 15 clinical studies, and they all reported the subjects taking the bifidobacterium, species of Longombrevian infantis, helveticus, and rhamnosus, with doses between, anyway from 100 million to 10 billion, showed big efficacy improving psychiatric symptoms associated with anxiety, depression, OCD, and memory abilities. So that's why probiotics are important. That's why you hear me, constantly on social media. You read on other outlets how important probiotics are to gut health. Now, again, among many reasons, this is why. Now, certain probiotic strains alone or in combination with prebiotics have shown numerous times to have positive implications for mental health. I see it in my practice all the time, which is huge. So if you guys are not aware, I was kind of going to go over which ones those are, so you know. But Lactobacillus plantarum can support normal stress responses and helps to lower occasional anxiety. It may have a very protective effect against memory deficit due to its ability to produce acetylcholine, very important neurotransmitter. Lactobacillus rhamnosus, that's another significantly shows decreased depression and anxiety scores for women is in postpartum periods, and enhances the psychological and physiological quality of life in general in stressed adults. Okay, these are studies that have been shown to do that. Lactobacilli reuteri. This one can decrease LPS-induced intestinal inflammation. That's a lipopolysaccharide, which is a sign of heavy inflammation in the gut. Lactobacillus casei, acidophilus, and bifidobacterium bifidum probiotic supplements have a beneficial impact on depression scores, insulin resistance, and C-reactive protein concentrations. Bifidobacterium longum, when it's combined with oligosaccharides, have been shown over and over to decrease inflammatory markers such as CRP, tumor necrosis factor alpha, AST, which is one of the liver enzymes, and the homeostatic model assessment for insulin resistance known as HOMAR. So I've talked about insulin resistance, diabetes, blood sugar control, and so forth, how important that is. That's why you see that, when these things are administered, even for 4 straight weeks at doses from about, again, 100 million to a billion, they can easily, attenuate responses to psychological and physiological stress. So even like studies with healthy volunteers demonstrated that Bifidus longum is associated with reduced stress and improved memory again and again. Why probiotics are so important. You have to take the right probiotics. They have to be the high quality probiotics, processed, manufactured in the proper way. There's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of worthless, products out there that claim all sorts of stuff. But, the right strains have to be taken. The strains have to be live. They have to be viable. They have to be also, dosed at the right amounts. When I dose probiotics, it's always in the billions. It's never in the millions. Always in the billions, and there's a good reason. Unless it's different single strains, that can be, it's a different story. But when you're using broad spectrum probiotics, especially people who have chronic issues, it has to be dosed accordingly. And how do I know that? Well, I run comprehensive, functional stool tests on every single person I work with. So again, I know how to dose, but it has to be dosed high. It has to be dosed accordingly. The last two are the Bifidobacterium breve, which can attenuate psychiatric and gastrointestinal manifestation associated with major depression disorder. The Bifidum has been also shown to support intestinal integrity and ultimately cause decrease of permeability of the gut or decreased leaky gut. Again, very important to have high quality, potent probiotic products used the right way. So sources of probiotics obviously include supplements, which are the easiest, but they're not cheap. Other natural sources include fermented foods such as yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso in your diet. For additional support, which almost all people will need, is a high quality probiotic supplement or probiotic supplements, depending on what the person needs. Here's the caveat. I know a lot of people, prescribe probiotic-rich foods, the ones I just mentioned, like the fermented foods, right? Also collagen and bone broth and so forth. The problem is, you have to know if those people are sensitive to those foods, okay? So you're not going to be giving somebody who has severe sensitivity, not allergy sensitivity to dairy all across the board, you're giving them kefir or yogurt. It's not going to happen. Somebody who is, sensitive to sauerkraut, ultimately cabbage, or anything that is in kimchi, it's not going to happen. You're doing them a disservice. If they have severe dysbiosis, including, those products like the sauerkraut and the kimchi, due to high fiber content in them, the cellulose content from the vegetables, it will wreck them. It can cause a massive, unpleasant reaction. So people with inflammatory bowel disease, especially with that diarrhea dominant, when they eat some of those foods, including leafy greens and other vegetables with fiber, it's like taking sandpaper on a fresh wound. The last thing you want to do. So how do you know? You test. You don't guess. You test. People that have a very high histamine sensitivity and intolerance, especially with mast cell activation, the last thing you're going to be giving them is, again, fermented foods, because they're very high in exogenous histamine, and so is bone broth. Okay, very high in exogenous histamine. Exogenous meaning that they're ingesting the histamine. These are very high histamine containing foods. So, be careful when you read stuff, even though generally that is speaking is true, especially if somebody's healthy and does not really have any substantial digestive problems. But if they do, and if they're sensitive to those foods, you'll be giving them something that potentially can make life very unpleasant for them. That's why you don't guess, you test. This is why when people listen to armchair experts on social media and everybody parrots out like a parrot or keep repeating the same crap all over again, even though the principles behind them are correct, that does not mean that these principles in particular situation for a person can be applied. Okay, as again, yes, it's organic, grass-fed, pasture raised, A2 yogurt and kefir, that is made from that milk. Can it be healthy? Absolutely can be healthy. It's a great source of micronutrients, macronutrients, absolutely. But is it a good source, a good healthy food for you? Not if you have food sensitivities, not if you have food allergy to dairy, not if you have compromised digestive function. It's not. So, you don't guess, you test. You don't just use a shotgun approach out there and just hope something sticks. You got to use precision rifling. You got to use precision point testing to know exactly what the person does and does not need. All right. Believe me, if it was that simple, I wouldn't need to be practicing what I practice. Everybody will be doing it themselves. So I always say this: be very careful when you're listening to an expert, okay? Or what we call this armchair experts, meaning that they are the kind of self-made experts. One of the telltale signs that they know the hell they're talking about is if you cannot actually get hold of them, and if they actually have zero clients that actually work in a clinical setting. If some person out there doing some high-end quality, high-def videos that are very, with infographics and great, just beautiful-looking videos, and they have 5 million followers and subscribers and viewers, whatever, but they don't have an actual practice. They work with live people. I'll be very, very aware of listening to them. Okay, because there's a lot of people that they're snake oil salesmen. And yes, they might speak a lot of true stuff, and that's great, but that does not mean it's applicable to you. Okay, I've always said that before. There's not an office for them to actually contact that you see, wow, this person works with actual real life patients, clients. Then most likely that's not a person you're going to want to really listen to. And the other thing is, a lot of people confuse information with actual clinical prevalence, and practice that applies to them. Einstein has a very good quote: "Any fool can know." That means that anybody can collect collect information, and they can pair it out like a parrot and make themselves sound phenomenally smart. But it's a completely different aspect to actually have true knowledge. And true knowledge only comes when a person has the correct information, and that correct information is applied in clinical practice over and over and over again, thus gaining true experience, clinical experience. So when you guys want to listen to your favorite podcaster or whoever, the latest and the greatest, internet hero is, be very careful. I'm not saying they're all bad. They're not. There's some really good guys out there. They know, they're clinicians. They know what they're talking about. They do a great job, but majority are not. Okay, so just caveat here. All right, so I'm sorry I digressed, but I see these problems all the time. I literally see them with clients that come to me for help, because I can't tell you how many literally hundreds, if not thousands of hours and money they've spent listening to those quote unquote experts and end up either nowhere or worse where they're off. So anyway, the other thing that we talked about here is obviously aside from the probiotics is the prebiotic rich foods. Prebiotics are basically substances that feed the good bugs in your tummy. That's what it boils down to. Prebiotics are non-digestible fibers ultimately that serves as fuel for beneficial gut bacteria, thus enhancing microbial diversity and gut barrier function. Basically, prebiotic-rich foods feed the good bacteria in your gut. As simple as that. Prebiotic intake has been directly linked to improved gut-brain signaling and emotional well-being. Why? Because when you feed the good, healthy gut bacteria in your gut, they're happy, they thrive, they do what they're supposed to, they produce the proper biochemicals that your body needs, which part of those are neurotransmitters and other hormones, and you feel better. It's just simple as that. So what are the sources of prebiotics? Well, garlic, onions, leeks, asparagus, bananas, or oats, any really good artichokes are phenomenal. Artichokes are absolutely amazing. Organic yams, sweet potatoes, yams. But the caveat again here is, don't guess, test. If you're sensitive to any of those foods, they'll do you more harm than good. I guarantee you that. Also, use organic foods. Do not buy inorganic. If you buy asparagus, make sure it's organic. Bananas, oats. If it's oats, make sure they're, again, certified organic, even better, certified organic and glyphosate-free tested oats, because that's a grain that is conventionally very, very highly sprayed with Roundup, or the active ingredient in there is glyphosate. So make sure you buy organic, make sure you do a food sensitivity test, that you know what is it that you're looking for. If you guys ever want to know what you're sensitive to, test. Simple as that. It's a little simple blood test that you do at home, and you'll be amazed. Reach out to me. I have one of the most comprehensive food tests available on the market. This test is, you do not have to have eaten the food in a particular time, meaning, say, you never really ate leeks or onions, for example, and asparagus. You say, you know what, I'm going to start eating those because they're good in prebiotics, but I never had them before. Well, that's not a problem. If you're sensitive to those foods, you'll tag it. So meaning that you don't have to have eaten that food. A lot of the tests on the market out there, if you haven't had that food within weeks or months at least of eating it, it will not tag it. It will give you what's called a false negative. The test I have, it will not. It is the most comprehensive gold standard test available to this day. It's called the IgG Food Explorer by Diagnostic Solutions Laboratory. Reach out to me. It's a simple test. I'll drop ship it to your home. You take your little test, FedEx picks it up from your door, and within 10 days or so, you'll literally know out of 260 plus foods what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. That's simple. So anyway, again, that's why I always say, if you are sensitive or obviously allergic to those foods, do not consume them. Simple as that. Okay, so let's go to number 3. Consume omega-3 fatty acids. That, advice has been probably, again, beat to death, but also has been given probably over 1 billion times. Everybody knows about omega-3s, particularly EPA and DHA. But they're important for a good reason. They exert an anti-inflammatory and a very strong anti-inflammatory effect on the gut and support neuronal health. That's why research is so heavily on those. And you see this all the time, how they directly enhances vagal activity, and they modulate gut microbiota composition. Very important. Sources of omega-3s, the best sources, well, wild caught, obviously safe, low mercury to no mercury. Fatty fish like salmon, herring, sardines, anchovies, mackerel. Very important. If you don't like seafood, you're gonna have supplement. Obviously, healthy ruminant animals that are truly raised organic in non-sprayed, pristine, grass-fed pasture raised situations and environments. are very high in omega-3s. True organic grass-fed beef bison, is going to, contain very high omega-3. If you want to know what your composition is, do a test. It's a simple blood test called the omega check. See what your composition is. If you're consuming processed food, fast food, anything that is, processed, conventional fare, salad dressings included, you're going to have most likely a very high ratio of 6:3. And those 6 omega-6s are not the natural healthy 6s that you're going to find in like raw nuts and seeds, but they are very inflammatory metabolic poisons, actually. They come from industrial seed vegetable oils that I've talked a lot about. That's why, it's out there now that some of the restaurants are even switching to tallow and other, healthy saturated fat sources to, fry their food and cook their food with, and avoiding, vegetable oils because they are poisonous. That's literally a metabolic poison. Plant-based sources will include like flax seeds, walnuts, some other nuts and seeds, but they are far from the best sources of omega-3s. Animal-based omega-3s are going to be the best. I'm going to do a whole podcast on omega-3s, but in a nutshell, you want to get high-quality omega-3 product from fish oil, and that is going to be in its natural triglyceride form. A lot of cheap alternatives are oxidized, they're not properly extracted, they're not properly processed, and also they're in the ethyl ester form, which is not a natural occurring form of the omega-3s. The natural triglyceride form is how they actually occur, and the company has to be very careful how they extract it. They usually nitrogen flush it so they can displace oxygen so it doesn't oxidize, how it's capsulated, how it's stored, processed in general, transported. All these things matter for a high quality product. Most of the stuff out there, especially if you buy them from big box stores, they're garbage, and a lot of them can actually do more damage than good. So omega-3s, if you can't eat the fish, the seafood, next best thing is to take high quality natural form in the triglyceride form fish oil supplement. Again, we have those. I use a product called Omega Veil TG1000. It's a very high concentrated pure omega-3 fish oil supplement that is by Designs for Health, and it is this true pure triglyceride form, the way nature intended. So again, quality of supplements matter, all right? So you can't eat fish, supplement. There is also some krill oil and some other forms from algae that are non-fish. If somebody's allergic to seafood, I've never seen somebody being allergic to fish oil because the oil is a very pure extracted lipid of the fish oil, so there are no proteins present. When somebody's allergic to it, they're going to be allergic to the proteins in those foods. Okay, so just a caveat here. So number 4, that's a very simple one, but the hardest of them all, and that is reduce and eventually avoid all processed and ultra-processed food and sugar. A diet high in processed foods and added sugars will disrupt gut microbiome balance without fail. It will contribute to systemic inflammation and will impair eventually vagal nerve function. So reducing those processed foods and eventually eliminating them, it'll make all the difference in the world. While obviously incorporating whole nutrient-dense foods that promote gut-brain health and harmony. There are many randomized and clinical trials that have been done lately about the perils of processed food. So I'm not going to go into those, but the bottom line is that they all show the same thing, that processed food has a detrimental effect. What is the definition between processed food and ultra-processed food? Ultimately, both of these types are going to contain the 2 or most likely even 3 of the following. They're going to contain some kind of wheat bleached white flour. They're going to contain some form of industrial seed vegetable oil. It's like soybean, canola oil, sunflower oil. They'll contain also some form of refined sugar, like high fructose corn syrup, dextrose, maltodextrose, corn solids, invert sugar, affectionate sugar, white sugar, you name it, is going to affect us. I don't even count, obviously, the food dyes, the artificial, sweeteners, colorings, the thickening agents and other preservatives that are just pure chemicals. I'm talking about the caloric-based things, but any processed, neutral processed food. So let me give you an example. Processed food is going to be the garbage that you go through Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, and you get yourself a bagel with cheese, cream cheese. One is obviously low quality, but the bagel is going to be made with, among other chemicals, bleach white flour from wheat, industrial seed vegetable oil, most likely soybean canola, and some form of refined sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and any of those. Even though it doesn't taste sweet, it will be. Ultra processed food will be example of a Twinkie, a Ding Dong donut. So you go to Dunkin' Donuts, you get yourself a bagel, and you treat yourself with a donut. Now you just ate a processed food, and the donut is the ultra processed food. That's like the worst of the worst. What we call ultra processed food in the industry is what people generally refer to as junk food. So they'll have go to Pizza Hut or whatever pizza place they eat. That's processed food. Most of it, the basis of it, the crust, obviously. And they will afterwards go and have a bag of chips. So they just had processed food and the bag of chips like Doritos, Frito-Lay, the Mexican, whoever makes that garbage. That's ultra processed food. Soft drinks like Coke, Pepsi, that's ultra processed foods. So do not be deceived when people say processed or ultra processed. Ultra processed are the worst of the two evil, but they are right there next to each other. So don't be deceived. Okay, having a bagel, conventional bagel that you buy from Dunkin' Donuts or somewhere else is not going to be good for you. It's going to cause the same effect eventually, just perhaps slightly slower than if you were to just eat a bag of chips or have a donut. Okay, so this is the difference between processed and ultra processed foods. Get them out of your diet. You'll never win the game of chronic disease if you do not remove processed and ultra processed food out of your diet. Okay, and I can tell you this: most people, when they come to me, they say, "Well, I don't eat processed food." They do. What they're ultimately saying is, "Well, I don't eat a lot of ultra processed food," meaning they don't eat again, ding dongs and Twinkies and ho-hos and donuts, and all that ultra processed garbage. But they eat the breads, the pastas, the croissants, the vegetable seed oil dressings, fast food garbage like Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is not healthy. Chick-fil-A is garbage, absolute garbage. They use very horrible meat from confined animal feeding operation, chicken houses, okay? And they also use insane amount of vegetable oil. So when you get your quote unquote grilled nuggets, thinking they're not fried, I mean, you might as well, enjoy the real thing and go get the actual fried nugget because it's not going to be that much better for you. You're still ingesting the same amount of copious vegetable seed oil even in the grilled chicken nuggets that they call. So again, I'm going to keep repeating this. It's not famous. It's not interesting. To some people, it's right down offensive because you're ultimately threatening their true existence. So they look forward to each day, which is obviously sad, but it's real. But these are the topics that have to be addressed, and unless they are addressed, nothing, and I mean nothing, will ever change. You can take all the supplements of the highest quality, all you can spend $1,000 a month, and I have people that do that, thinking they're going to address the root cause, and unless you address your nutrition, nothing will change. I can guarantee you that. So again, take out the processed food, big thing. If you can afford organic food, which for most people, especially living in big cities, it's really not an issue so much because every grocery store has it, and even the massive warehouses like Costco and Sam's Club and BJ's Club, they all carry them. They are pretty much not really even more expensive than regular conventional. But even if not, eat whole food. It might not be organic. It might not be the best quality. It might be grown somewhere in China. That's okay. It is thousands of times better eating whole food, whether it's fresh, frozen, or canned, that doesn't have any preservatives, doesn't have any garbage chemicals, and obviously is not processed in any way, than if you were to eat processed, ultra-processed food. So the bottom line is this: supporting the gut-brain axis, okay, and stimulating the vagus nerve are integral to overall well-being. That is the bottom line. By integrating the simple lifestyle strategies that I discussed, such as humming, gargling, deep breathing, cold exposure, alongside a microbiome supportive diet, gut health and mental resilience will be supported without fail. Okay, and I think that right now, spring is the ideal time to reset your habits, embrace nourishment, and cultivate those practices and foster long-term health. As I said it before, and I keep saying it again, it is probably going to be the hardest journey we've ever taken, or among some of the hardest, because as simple as it is, you're dealing with food addiction and unhealthy habits, and these are not easy to change. Okay, they're simple to change. It's very basically don't eat this and just eat this, but they are so hard because of our psychological relationship with those habits and those foods. So the key is this: don't give up. You will fall 1,000 times. As soon as you get back up, continue. And don't give up. People always ask, what is the secret? What is the formula? What is the hack? And this and that. There's no hacks. There's no secrets. There's no BS. The bottom line is this. Here's the reality of the journey. People that keep going and don't give up, regardless how many times they actually trip and fall and fail, as long as they get back up and keep trying, eventually they'll reprogram themselves, for lack of a better expression, and they will succeed. Okay, it's like people investing in the stock market. As long as you keep investing, as long as you keep going and being consistent, you're gonna have some growths, you're gonna have some dips, you're gonna have some mountaintops, you're gonna have some massive valleys. But the end, you'll be 1,000 times better off than if you've never invested and you never started doing anything. You will succeed. That is the key to success, is ultimately not giving up and just trying. It took me 5 years to be able to give up bread. It took me 3 years to be able to give up Snickers bars, Kit Kats, and cheesecake. When I came to the States in 1990, I tasted those things and I was addicted and hooked. I was done. I had no idea that something that good existed for the taste. So when I went on my journey, now mind you, I wasn't even born and raised here, nor was I born and raised in those foods. I was 13 years old when I first tasted them. And because they're so cheap and so normal part of a quote unquote the American diet, nobody said anything. As long as you ate them after your meal, you're good to go. There was no harm in following those things. So I kept eating them. And by the time I started really getting into nutrition and fitness and really understanding the role of nutrition, I was at that point about 20 years old. So it was only 7 years that I was consuming those foods on a regular basis, but it took me literally 3 years to stop eating the sugar stuff and about 5 years total to stop eating wheat gluten-containing foods like breads, pastas, bagels, and so forth. So my encouragement to you is don't give up. Start. It's okay to fail. It's okay to fall. You will. That is part of it. Nobody has ever done it perfect. And I mean, nobody. I have had clients that if I mention the name, you absolutely know who they are. And I'm going to tell you right now, even though as gung-ho as quadruple type A personality there were take no prisoners. I mean, just do or die, ultimately balls to the wall type of mentality of the highest that you can imagine. Not a single one of them was able to get 100% right. They tripped, they fell, just like anybody else. So don't compare yourself regardless to anybody, but that is the reality of the journey. That you don't give up, you will succeed. Just start. Anyway, I did digress again. So I apologize for that, but these are just topics that, they're real. This is not scripted. I'm just telling you my experience, personal and professional, and I really hope that this helps you guys. Next, we're going to talk about good omega-3s and how they are so important in many, many different aspects. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. We do offer free consultations and assessments. Give us a call, reach out to us if we can help you in any way. If you guys want good high quality supplements, again, please reach out to us, go to our store. Anybody who orders from us, you guys have actual real person that you can ask questions about your supplements. If you order magnesium or something else, you want to know what's the best way to take it, or if there's any interaction with any drugs you're taking, or if there's any depletion interactions that the drug you're taking can cause based on the supplement you bought. Ask us. We'll tell you. We'll help you anywhere we can. So reach out to us. We'd love to help you. This is what we are here for. Hope you guys have a great day. Until next time.
Thank you for your valuable time and for listening to the Your Health Reclaimed podcast with Dr. PND. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a person you know it can help. If we can help you in any way, or you would like to connect with Dr. PND, please visit drpnd.com. That's drpnd.com.